Everybody, it's Nick. Welcome back to another video. In this video, I'm going to give a 1-year review of my 2021 Wolf Pup 16TS. Now, some of the other videos on the channel, I've mentioned some of the upgrades I've made to the trailer over time and things like that. Some of those were related to, things I didn't like about the trailer and some things I just wanted to upgrade from the beginning, like the battery and electrical system. So in this video, we're going to go through every inch of this trailer, inside, out, underneath, and I want to talk about everything I've noticed from owning this trailer for almost a year now. So stay tuned. Here's my 1-year review on the 2021 Wolf Pup 16TS. So we're going to start on the inside of the trailer from the back going forward. Again, I can only speak to the 2021 Wolf Pup 16TS. I don't think they've changed much on the 2022s and even the late 2021s, but this is my experience. So you will notice that the trailer right now is pretty empty if you've noticed other videos in the past, and that's because I'm getting it ready to sell. It's actually ready to sell. I've emptied all my stuff out. So this trailer is kind of neat because it has a rear dinette with a huge window there in the back. The dinette folds down into a bed and it has storage underneath the cushions and everything. So I never had a problem with that. I've had a friend or two stay on that and sleep on there for a week or less, and it was comfortable and they didn't have a problem with it. So no problems there as far as the bed goes. These upper cabinets that are above the dinette, when I got them, they were just hinges on the top. So you kind of had to hold up this door, to get stuff, which was kind of a pain in the butt. So this would always fall down. I installed these little gas struts you can see here on the sides. They were only a few dollars on Amazon. I will link those in the description down below. There's also no lighting in here initially when I got the trailer, and now I put in these little LED motion lights. So that was super helpful. Same thing on both sides. This one as well didn't lift up on its own, so I installed a strut. One thing I learned, this looks like it's a rust stain, but actually it's what happens when a bunch of Lysol cleaner ends up on this wallpaper. I also had some command strips up here that you can see kind of peeled away at the wallpaper on top when it got really hot. This is just sort of like a laminate that's on top of the plywood that creates these walls, or that these walls are made out of, I should say. And so after a while, when you have weight, like a bottle hanging on there, it ends up pulling that down a bit. So that's kind of a bummer. And then this just stained the wallpaper a little bit. But this is also fully a pass-through in the back here. But it is, to keep in mind, you can't have too much stuff in here because it's just kind of hollow into this bottom area here. So I ended up putting these little grip stuff down too to prevent stuff from sliding around. But keep that in mind with the back side. You'll notice that the window treatments around this trailer, all the way around except for the kitchen one, I put in these blackout roller shades. The trailer came with these gray, the standard kind of pleated RV shades. I found that was fine, but in the morning and stuff, there's just so much light that comes through there. So I put in these little roller shades that are kind of custom sized that I made on a website that I'll link below as well. But as far as the windows go, no issues. Again, they're just standard sliding windows. You'll see in my other video on the channel where I talked about where someone broke in through the back window. They were easily able to push that glass in and slide the window open. And that's how they gained entry. Since then, let's see if I can pull this up here. Since then, I have put in a little, just one of those standard window thumb latches right there. And that prevents the window from sliding if someone were to push it open from the back side. I put in this little Reflectix stuff here in all the windows. The trailer's in storage right now. And I moved to Orlando, so it's a little bit hotter here than Utah. And so I put in that Reflectix to kind of help with the heat while it's in storage. Okay, moving a little bit more forward. I never had any problems with the microwave other than the glass here ends up, when it got really hot, it would start separating from the microwave. There's like some kind of, adhesive tape that they use to hold that up. So you might want to look at potentially having that on standby in case that ends up loosening up for you. It never actually fell off, but you could tell that the glass was starting to come away from it. on the inside, the only problems I had was just this thing bouncing around in travel. It wasn't that big of a deal. You could get one of those little spanner bars there to kind of keep that in place if you wanted. When they build these trailers, they try to hide the electronics that are in this upper cabinet here. And when they do that, they put this piece of wood that goes all the way across and angles out to like here, and you lose all this space. So what I ended up doing was I cut this board in half and I rearranged the wires back here so that they're a little more bundled together, kind of pushed out in the back there. And I moved this unit, which is just kind of precariously hung on the wall anyway. And I put that nice and solid up against the wall completely, moved it towards the front, which allowed me to take these boards and actually create all this extra space here in the cabinet, as you can see, for dishes and storage and whatnot. So now I have this whole cabinet space, where before I only had it up to about here. So that's something that I keep in mind as well for this particular trailer, and really a lot of Wolf Pups and travel trailers. Some people had problems with the glass on the trailer. I didn't have any problems with that myself. I even put a lot of stuff on here that I probably shouldn't have, and it never broke. It stayed intact, and to be honest, I only used these burners a couple times. Moving on to the sink. In one of my original videos, I talked about how this started rusting out. I only had that happen one time, and it was right after I used some of the Happy Camper deodorizer stuff. I put a little bit of that in there to put into the gray tank, and that's when it happened. But when I stopped doing that, I never had it rust again. I also did apply some polish and stuff like that, and that probably helped. But I never really had it rust again after that, so I don't know which fixed it, if it was not using the Happy Camper or if it was the polish I put in there. But either way, keep that in mind, that you might have that potential possibility of it rusting. And then the only other thing with the sink is the Wolf Pups come with this little hand sanitizer pump. That thing broke off underneath pretty much day 2. The little bottle was, I think they over tightened it when they screwed it on. I used it for a soap bottle for a little bit, and then I just stopped using it altogether. So that was pretty much it for the sink. Onto the refrigerator. This is a Canon 12-volt refrigerator. I love this thing. I never had any problems with it. It cools down so fast and stays cold and uses very little energy, which I love about it. And everything works as expected as far as the refrigerator goes. The only thing that you may experience, which some people have, is if you're in a very hot environment and the fridge really has to struggle to sort of cool it down, it goes into this sort of safe mode where the freezer will stay running no problem, but the fridge will only maintain kind of a low temperature, not necessarily like a really cold temperature. And you'll notice that the indication up here will start blinking when the fridge is off right now, but it'll start blinking when that happens. And that usually means that the compressor is limited. So usually all I've had to do is either press and hold this button to turn it off, and then press and hold it again to turn it on, and then it comes back no problem, or cycle between the temperature ranges. And the third option is to kill your 12-volt switch so it cuts power to the fridge altogether. I only had that happen, I think, one time, and it really was like 102 degrees outside. So it just had trouble keeping up. Other than that, I love that fridge. Never had any problems with it. The furnace, early on, I replaced the thermostat with a digital thermostat, and I'll never go back. I mean, this ended up being so great. It lights up at night, as you can see right there, so I can see the temperature. It's a little warm in here right now. And yeah, as long as there's gas in the lines, the thing turns on and it maintains temperature, and there you go. What I ended up doing, though, was not really using the furnace as much, because I went with a little space heater, which for this tiny trailer is perfect for. And I was already hooked up to shore power, and I didn't have to worry about using propane and stuff when that happened. So moving on into the bathroom. The only thing about these Wolf Pup trailers is the bathroom. They don't have a sink inside of them. Some of the showers have a little side basin, but if that's okay with you, then this will work fine. I'm 6'2", and I come pretty close to the top of the shower here. Let me show you. I come pretty much to the ceiling here, and I'm crouching down, as you can see. So if I ever had to take a shower in here, which has only been a few times, it's really kind of a duck and get yourself wet and, you know, make it work. But, you know, the curtain wraps around and it ends up working for what you need it for if you just need a shower real quick, but it's kind of small. The last thing to note about the shower is the shower pan itself. This is basically propped up by some 2x4s underneath it. It is not supported very well towards the front right here. You can kind of hear it move. So what I would recommend is you can pop this little access panel open and throw a couple pieces of wood there to sort of prop up underneath the frame to help stabilize this, because once you first step in this and it makes like a cracking noise, it's kind of frightening and you think you probably broke it. But it's easy to access. You open that up, you'll see the piping and stuff down there, and there's already wood pieces in there. You can just use that to prop it up to make it a little more sturdy on the ground. Not much to say about the toilet. I swapped this out relatively early on to the Dometic 310. Love this toilet. I'll never go back to a different toilet. The toilet that this one came with was a smaller plastic toilet, and when I put this thing in, it's porcelain, it's taller, it's a bigger bowl, soft closed lid. I love this. No leaks or anything. Really enjoy that toilet altogether. And then I also, in my other videos, I explained that I put in the deluxe fan here, which has been great as well. Some things to note about some of the comfort features, like the air conditioner that people have talked about. The air conditioner is loud. You know, it makes a lot of noise. I did end up upgrading this panel so that it has a built-in thermostat and Bluetooth control for it here. But in general, the air conditioner is pretty loud. So if you want to have a conversation, you're going to have to talk a little bit louder. And if you got TVs and stuff, you're going to have to crank those volume up, the volume up on those things quite a bit. Moving on to the control side here. Now the later models of the Wolf Pups have the button to turn on the electrical side of the water heater here on the panel, which is super nice, so you don't have to go outside and turn that on. And then this is just the gas side of the water heater. So if you have that newer model, super good for you. You don't have to walk outside every time and flip that switch. You can just choose whether it's going to be gas or electric from here on the panel. One thing is that's important for people to know is the awning lights. When you turn those on, the speakers have little blue LEDs that are in them, and they're tied to the awning light switch. So what I did early on, here's an example. I'll turn this back on. What I did early on is I actually unscrewed the speakers and the sub from the ceiling, and I just unplugged the little leads and kind of taped them up that went to the LED part of the speaker so that they weren't on. Because sometimes I want to keep the awning lights on at night, but I don't want any blue lights on inside the trailer. So that's one way to bypass that. Moving forward on the trailer, nothing much to report here on the front side of it. The bed I upgraded to a mattress that I already had. It came with a headboard originally. I took the headboard out so I can put a full-size queen in. Over time, the gas struts on the bed mechanism here kind of wore down, and so they don't hold the bed up anymore. That's because this mattress is a lot heavier. So that's something to keep in mind. I just propped something underneath over there to keep it up. I think that's gonna wrap it up for the inside of this trailer. We talked about the back side here with the dinette area. Fantastic bedding situation, super easy to assemble and disassemble. The cabinet doors where they don't have struts to hold them up, so I put those in. The fridge, doing a wonderful job as a 12-volt fridge, keeping stuff cold. The microwave, the storage inside here in the cabinet, the control panel here. The radio, I'll make one note about the radio. It's okay. It's pretty basic. It doesn't sound very great. A lot of people had problems with this being wired wrong. So you're going to hear audio through your speakers, but technically speaking, they weren't wired up correctly. Some people had the sub wired up to one of the main speakers and vice versa. And if you notice the audio might sound a little weird, find the manual for this. This one is the Driven DR3200BT. And you can see where it gives you a wiring diagram. You just go behind there, they're color-coded wires, and you can fix it yourself. It's pretty simple. Yeah, the kitchen area, no problems with that. Going towards the front, the bedding area, no issues with that at all. All lights and everything worked this entire time. Never had any problems with that. Again, this is sort of an interesting situation just because I sort of upgraded the trailer over time with the electronics as far as the batteries go. And you can look at all the other videos on the channel regarding the electrical systems and other upgrades to get an idea of how I've changed the systems from what they were day one. But that should be it for the inside. Let's head on to the outside, where I'll talk about some of the things I've experienced with the outside of the trailer. Okay, working our way around the outside of the trailer. One thing I'll start with is the main door here. This is a friction door, so it holds itself open pretty well. The downside with the Wolf Pup 16TS design, though, is the way the awning works. You can't have the door all the way open if the awning is out, as you can see right there. So that's something to keep in mind. The other part about that is if the awning is out and the door is open like this, you can't put the steps all the way in because it doesn't clear the door jamb. So, you know, if you need to bring the steps in, you got to bring the awning all the way in, open up the door all the way, and then bring the steps in. So a little inconvenient, but I only had that happen probably a couple times where I had to go through those notions. The windows in the Wolf Pups don't have any sort of blinds or anything in them. They are tinted because of the glass, at least on my model, because of the tinted glass on the front here. So I put in the Lippert shade thing at the top here that would pull down. Honestly, not a very good product, and I'll tell you why. It over time melts at the top and then ends up not holding its shape and then just kind of falls down. There is another third-party one out there that you could probably try out. That's on Amazon, but the Lippert sunshade or whatever it's called, thin shade, is a meh for me. But that's not a Wolf Pup thing, that's a Lippert thing, so keep that in mind. As far as everything else on the outside goes, these speakers I never had any problems with. The awning, never had any issues with. Oh, I'm sorry, actually, the one thing I did have an issue with the awning was the arms here. So these are designed so that you can pull this awning down like this, right? If you need to angle it down to let water down or things like that. But the problem is these little turn screws, even though you'll turn them so they're completely tight, the arm still slides, and it was never able to hold its shape when I pulled down either one of these arms. So that was kind of a bummer. Luckily, I only had encountered that problem maybe one time, and when I did that, I just had a strap that went down to the floor. So that's one problem I had with these particular models. I don't know what these are. These are the Lippert Edge awnings, I guess, Solera or something like that. So that's one problem I had with it. Other than that, though, no real problems on the outside of the trailer. Going down around the rest of it, never had any sort of seal issues or water intrusion issues. I always check my seals on the roof once a month. I have a little outside ladder, extendable ladder that I would put up to get up there. So I recommend you always check those once a month, and never had any seal issues. For the sewer stuff, I did start to have the handle here. It is cracked a little bit. You can kind of see it wiggling on here, but as long as you hold it and you can pull it, no issues with the sewer system and dropping the gray or the black tank at all. The jacks for the stabilization jacks on the trailer, never had any problems with those either. Those work like a champ. I'd spray some dry lube on there to keep them lubricated pretty well without kicking up a bunch of dirt and stuff. That worked out pretty well. The only other thing with the outside, which I guess is part of the systems, is I mentioned before, the water system, the way that water tank works, you know, where it had a little vent that came out the side of it, and so you can never really get it full. And even when you got the water tank full, driving down the road, it would siphon some of that water out. So I ran a hose from that vent and ran it up to here so that it vents properly. I made a whole separate video about that. A lot of people have found that pretty helpful. One thing I failed to mention in that video, though, is if you're going to do that project, you're going to run a tube up and you go to this thing, they'll most likely have filled this with silicone. So make sure that you go inside there and pull that silicone out. Otherwise, you're not doing yourselves any favors. Water heater worked like a champ. No problem with that. Change out that anode rod when you start seeing some of the core of the anode rod after a few months. It also just depends on the type of water you're using. The one thing I will say on the outside, and really the main structure of the trailer, is the suspension. This has been a big problem for a lot of Wolf Pup people. Let's see if I can get underneath here. I'll show you what I'm talking about when I sit on these rocks. I talked about in another video how I put in these sumo spring suspension assist things here in between the axle and the frame of the trailer. Same with this side right there. For some reason, this Wolf Pup, the right side sits down farther than the left side. So the problem with that is these leaf springs, I think, are not strong enough for this particular trailer. If you don't do any sort of suspension, you'll most likely bottom out on the frame. And I don't know if I don't know if you can see it from down here. No, you're not gonna be able to see it. There's actually a little dent in the frame where probably me taking it home the first time, because I put those Sumo springs in pretty quickly after I bought it. And what I found is there might have been a couple times where the axle actually bottomed out on the frame of the trailer. And so some people have actually had a problem where that cut their brake lines, and where the wires got pinched in between and they weren't able to have working brakes without fixing the wires. One thing I want to show you, looking across the way to the spring on that side, it's relatively flat, you know. And so once you start putting weight, and you saw this trailer is completely empty right now, once you start putting weight in here, if you don't have that little Sumo spring or something, these leaf springs are not doing much for you as far as suspension goes. And I'm worried that that's gonna start hitting the frame. You might be able to see the dent a little bit there on the trailer, but yeah, it's been okay with those little pieces I had, but I didn't like how that was set up. I didn't like the springs they used. And also the axle rating on this trailer is only 3,500 pounds. So to review some of the weights on this trailer for you, you'll see here that the trailer has a GVWR of 3,970 pounds, but it's got an axle rating of 3,500 pounds. And so the problem with that is, you know, you're almost always going to hit your axle rating before you're going to actually hit your GVWR. Now keep in mind that that's just the weight that's over the actual axle. You can have that weight spread out and be at almost 3,970 pounds spread across the whole trailer, not just all sitting on the axle. So that's why it's not usually that big of a deal. I personally think they should have put the 4,500 pound axles on these things, because in reality, people are going to put a few hundred pounds. The cargo carrying capacity on this thing is not that much. Again, I'll show you the sticker and I'll list it down below. But you know, these are not very, these trailers really are made to just go out on the weekends. You know, they're not made to live in full time. Just saying that they're not very strong. They're just meant to kind of go out on the weekend, have a good time, kind of give you the bare minimum. That's why they're inexpensive. But I guess nowadays with the RV market, everything's really expensive. I can honestly say that in general, I really love this trailer. I love the upgrades I've done on it. Those upgrades have worked really well on the trailer, and I would recommend this to anybody starting out. So do your research if you're going to go buy a new trailer. If you're looking at the Wolf Pup line or the 16TS or things like that, you know, do your research, see what other people have said. This is just my experience. Some people have had worse experiences than I've had. They've had leaks right out the gate. They've had flooring come up. They have windows pop out. I just didn't have any of those problems. Maybe I got a good one off the line. Sometimes it depends on the time of the year and, you know, how the assembly lines are doing. So if you guys have any questions, leave them down in the comments down below. I'll be replying to you. Sorry this is a long video, but I wanted to really give you that 1 year review of this trailer since I've had it. And if you want to reference any of the things I've talked about so far when it comes to like the upgrades I've been talking about and the batteries and the water system and stuff like that, check out all the other videos on the channel. You'll see what I'm talking about. Make sure to like and subscribe, hit the notification bell, all the YouTube things. And again, if you have any questions, leave them down in the comments down below. Thanks for watching, everybody, and we'll see you on the next one.